What's happening, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more acid-techno. Going back to the Corrosive label. Shout out to Austin Corrosive, label boss. It's a label, I think it's been around about a decade. I'm thinking, are there 9? I have all of them. I actually got the most recent one not too long ago. So that means if I check my collection on Discogs, which is already open, I should be able to figure out before too long exactly how long they've been around. Okay, here we go. So yeah, the most recent one was 2021, and it was the 9th, and the first release was in 2010. So yeah, they've been around about a dozen years, 9 releases. This release, the second one, I do believe was considered a massive hit, and the reason I know this is because for years after, there was such a clamoring for a repress, because, you know, a lot of acid-techno labels, they, you know, don't make insane numbers of copies, sometimes, you know, 200 copies, 500 copies, whatever. So I believe this record was so insanely popular for a couple of different reasons. Like, we're going to listen to the title track, Acid Corrosion, which is Chris Liberator and Sterling Moss. I've talked about them before, just a devastating duo. But yeah, the other tune I think that a lot of people are really crazy about is Tassid's Lethal Poison. That one, I remember seeing a couple comments on the Discogs page for this release that they're like, oh, that's the track. But regardless of which track is your true cup of tea, I do remember there were lots of people saying, hey, we need a repress, we need a repress. And eventually Chris Liberator commented on the page, he's like, hey, look, you know, it's not always easy, because sometimes you don't have the original masters, and you know, sometimes you do the repress and people don't buy it, you end up losing money, and that means there's another like release that doesn't get to come out, you know, another like new track from maybe, you know, a new artist, and ultimately you have to make choices. So he was like, look, we're gonna do a repress of this, but you know, put your money where your mouth is, and step up and buy it. And they did not only a repress of this, but they added an extra remix of the sort of title tune of both the release and kind of the label overall, one might even say. But yeah, ultimately, I have both. This is the original here. This is the original Corrosive #2. But as I said, I do have the one, I think it's a Punky Junks remix. I'm trying to remember who does the specific remix of Acid Corrosion. But yeah, this is the original of Acid Corrosion on Acid Corrosive #2, Acid Corrosive, on Corrosive Records #2. And I'm trying to remember, is this 2010? 2011. This is 2011. So here we go. Acid Corrosion by Chris Liberator and Sterling Moss. And get ready for a rip-roaring acid-techno affair that almost like reminds me, before it really gets going here, if you took like an old pump panel tune, like Confusion or like another one that I'm blanking on. But yeah, if you took like an old pump panel tune, but then cycled it through like a more having it like London acid filter, you get this tune. Because it has that, like, a lot of pump panel tunes have that really simple acid riff in terms of, you know, the actual flow of the riff. It's just the quality of the riff is so great that it just becomes this legendary tune. Revolver, or Evolver? What the hell is the name? It's not Ego Acid. I like that one too, but that is a different sound. But yeah, I guess you could just say Confusion. It sounds like if you took that tune and made it more punk rock, more Stay Up Forever style. Would have made the beginning of the first blade to be very different, right? Watch how it takes off, right? Like, the riff's already there. Like, alright. And then it just fucks off, like, let's go. One of the few like live sets, like party sets, I have a video of on the channel here. Look up my party mix playlist. track I finish with this. It's the one for Acid Rain. But yeah, it's one of those tracks where like you play it, like what do you play after this? Like, not many tunes can follow this. It's like a punk rock guitar riff, like, but acid. Heard it like hotting up. And back into like standby mode during the breakdown. Just like this pulse rhythm. Those tunes were like, it's not trying to reinvent the wheel, it's not trying to be overly dramatic or complicated. It was a build-up, but it wasn't like, it wasn't insanely long or like complicated. It's just like they found a really feel-good, having-it acid riff, and we're just gonna fucking ride it the whole way out. It's in its singing now. We still got another level to go too. Action now. It's like, again, it found an acid sweet spot and it's just gonna hit it again and again and again. Oh my god! Temperature comes down, but the low end comes in a little stronger right now. It's like the high end like cools off, but the low end is like, alright, activate. A very stripped down outro. I remember thinking like, much like this all the way to the end, although there is like a final moment where it takes the kick out and that heavy low end comes back, where it like comes to the fore again. But yeah, I guess my 1% criticism of this tune is, I mean, there is that like acid pulse, right? It just feels like a very rapid de-escalation when it gets to this outro part. So for me, like, if I were to mix out of it, if I were to try to put a tune after this, I want to start my double drop at that measure, like, drop, like, when that outro breakdown ends, like, right at that moment. Because this, like, if you let this play for a long time, and then bring in a new tune, it'll feel to me a little bit like the energy kind of went down, and then you're going to have to try to, like, ramp it back up again, so. I don't know if it's so much a criticism of the track. I guess it just means that like you got to start mixing out a little earlier than you might on other tracks. Kick drum is very nice in this tune, and now that it's sort of near isolation, I'm noticing it more. It can sound like that sometimes. Yeah, absolute banger. You know, I get why there was much clamoring for more copies of this record, because if I discovered this record and I didn't have it, I would be like, oh man, like there's none for sale. Like, you guys aren't gonna repress this, are you? Because I could really use this piece of vinyl. But yeah, fortunately, you know, a lot of these record labels, you know, I either knew the people involved on the first record and was like, oh, I gotta get that, or, you know, after the first release, I just knew the quality of the label. So again, yeah, I got all the Corrosives, absolutely love the label. Once again, shout out to Austin. One of the System Rejects as well, I have all of those, thankfully. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think of this tune. I might come back for the remix at some